This is the True Politics Podcast. I am your host, Gerald Xavier, with our co-host, Andy Silva, and today we're going to talk about our political beliefs, where we stand on the important issues of today. And to kick it off, Mr. Silva, I will ask you, what are your political beliefs? Where do you see this conversation going? And what do we want to get into today?
Yeah, man. So if I had to summarize myself up in like one word, on the political spectrum or names everyone knows, I would say I'm a libertarian. Obviously, that's if you were to talk to like nerdy libertarian types, that itself is a fairly broad spectrum. I mean, there's the people that are straight up like anarchy, no government, private citizens can handle themselves 100%, which I lean pretty close towards that. But then there's the ones that are like, they say they're libertarian, but they're like, I'm libertarian, but I still want us to have a Congress. It's like, oh, so you want a nicer Congress is what you want. Like, okay. I mean, so there's that, like that broad strokes for that party or that belief system. So I would lean towards the no government side, I guess. I mean, I'm not completely.
You're an anarchist.
Not completely against that. I'm not completely against it.
So you're saying.
But
so
yeah,
what you're saying is.
To the ground. But yeah, I mean, I've how can I put this? The arguments for it, I've heard, are much more convincing than the arguments against it. Like, if that's what you want to say. Like, I have my own, like, oh man, do we really, should we have, some type of police force out there or whatever? Like, yeah, I still have those inklings, but the arguments against all that stuff I've heard are much stronger than, oh, we have to have it because, the argument, I heard this one line, I forgot who it was that said it, but they're talking about roads. And they're like, well, who's going to take care of roads if you don't have government or whatever? Who's going to take care of the roads? And I forgot, it's one of the famous thinkers of the movement throughout the years said something like the same people who make the shoes. Like, well, everybody pretty much needs shoes today. Like, I guess you can survive without them, but you need something on your feet. That's not provided by the government. So roads, like, yes, it would probably look different than it does today, but it would still work. We'd find a way to make it work, and probably, based on what we've seen in our lives, like, make it work better. I mean, how often do we joke about how inefficient government is, or like, you see a bunch of guys standing around a fucking pothole on the road, and it's like, oh, yep, one guy doing work and a bunch of guys, leaning on their shovel, and it's like, oh, okay, so you're telling me we can't find a way to do it better than them? Like, that, I doubt that. So I do lean that direction, and I have my reasons for how I got there, which we can get into a little bit later. But how about you? Where are you on the whole spectrum of things? I can't quite put my finger on it with you.
That's intentional. And so to sort of bring it back, when I first started thinking about politics, I was a conservative, Republican, whatever you want to call it, mainly because my parents were, and I just followed. So I shouldn't even say that I was really thinking about politics. It was more so like awareness of it, right?
Same here.
So that was in high school. Then I flip-flopped over to liberal, fiercely liberal in college, because
kind of a natural move in college. Yeah.
You basically, to survive in the social hierarchy, you need to be liberal. Otherwise, you're thought of as Neanderthal in college or in any liberal university campus, which is all the university campuses.
And you majored in, it was philosophy and also like some type of film thing as well, correct?
Yeah, philosophy and cinema. And philosophy, we talked a lot about politics and law and policies. Like, I took classes in everything from corporate social responsibility to philosophy, politics, and law. So really talking about yeah, really talking about the whole spectrum of issues. And the issue with college for me was, of course, that like everybody is sort of thinking the same way, and you're under a professor who basically grades you on your ability to. The great professors will gauge you on your ability to think independently,
Mhm.
but most professors, I will say, will gauge you on your ability to think like them.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's, that's a very human trait. Like most people like people who have similar values, similar beliefs, similar opinions. Like that's just the way it goes with culture and
Yeah.
whatnot. Um, then more recently, as I got into business, I got into like free enterprise entrepreneurship, learning about these ideas of very much like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, very libertarian, but also have friends that are like almost anarchist socialists, like the opposite end of the spectrum. And so for a while, I was like, I started to identify as a libertarian socialist. So like both ends of the spectrum, basically almost like a free market capitalism mixed with like just don't let people die, and then that's it. Like really like staunch, like all right, like let Jeff Bezos take over the entire world, and at the same time just make sure that the people at the bottom end of the spectrum,
Yeah, something like that.
exactly, like make sure people don't die. But since then, and since starting this with you,
Mhm.
I've actually come to the point where I call myself an independent. And I think what that means is, because that can mean a whole slew of things, similar to saying I'm a libertarian, right? It's like all these different things. Um, to me, it means looking at the two major parties in the country, not identifying with either on all issues, identifying with both on some issues, as well as incorporating some libertarian ideas,
Mhm.
and really trying to keep an open mind to the different ideas that are out there to sort of inform this independent viewpoint.
Mhm. And what was like your did you have a and it could have been like recently, like you said, you kind of just through our podcast have kind of started to change what you feel about certain issues, or maybe it was in college or whatever. What was like your or one of what was it like that kind of started you? Because I mean, we hung out in as 4 years in college all the time, and like maybe we'd all kind of be like, oh yeah, it's kind of cool that Obama won the election, and then we'd like go do something else with our day. And now I'm like, I mean, listen to podcasts about it all the time. I don't watch news really because again, I can talk about that later, but I read a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of the people I follow on Twitter, on Instagram is leaning that direction. So it's like, what is it that like kind of piqued your interest in it? What was the moment that made you kind of flip to being like, hang on, what's going on over here?
So for me, that's an awesome question, because for me, it's going to be very different from I think a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, it wasn't really top of mind at all for me. Even when Obama was elected, I remember when people on campus, literally like a storm of college students, were running through the campus chanting Obama's name.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty indifferent to what was going on in the political sphere for most of my life. And then it was probably around the age of 25, so going back like 5 years, where I got into, like I said, business, entrepreneurship, and marketing. And I realized that a lot of the psychological tools that marketers use to get people to buy things are the same things that politicians are using to get people to believe in them, believe in their party, convince them that they're the right guy for the job, etc. So it came from an interest in persuasion and psychology. And going down that rabbit hole, discovering why people believe what they believe, and just being curious about that condition in people. So it was out of that motivation that the interest went from, like, why do people buy things? Like, why does somebody spend $2.50 for a smart water when there's a $1.50 Dasani right next to it?
Right.
Like, so similarly, like, why does somebody vote for a candidate like Donald Trump instead of a candidate like Hillary Clinton, on and on and on. So that's what really got me to start paying attention to politics, because it's really just about people and why they make decisions and why they believe what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was that. And like, I would ask the same question of you, because, dude, I remember you like the Red Sox, but I would not have expected, from going to college with you and knowing you for 4 years, that you would be the guy to be listening to, because you really listen voraciously, it seems like, to podcasts on politics and libertarian.
Yeah, so, I mean, I listen to ones that, like anybody else, I listen to ones that generally side with me.
Sure.
Just from, just not getting into the philosophy, why I listen to podcasts a lot is, I for a while, Jess and I were living like 5 hours one way apart, and I would drive to see her a lot back in New York. So I would had to kill time somehow. We can only listen to, the friggin' EDM satellite radio channels for so long. Yeah.
Yeah, just haul an ass going 120, and then you're like, I should be more responsible.
Yeah. That's a state trooper. Those lights are behind me. Yep, no, he's not celebrating. He's pulling me over. Okay. Yeah, so I just they became a really good, and it's informative. Like, I learned stuff. I learned stuff that has a bias, obviously, like they're coming with their own angle. But I learned about I'm never going to turn on Fox News and listen to, even though I actually have heard some clips from him, he sounds like a pretty cool guy. I'm never going to listen to Tucker Carlson talk. Never going to listen to whatever those people you want to call them on CNN, that clown show, MSNBC, so on and so forth. So I just kind of like these podcasts. It's much more in depth. It gives me actual details on things. It's not just reading a headline and trying to sound cool. So that's why I got into them. But I guess what led me down to going into those type of podcasts, it's a weird moment, and followed me on this a little bit. So I don't know how, obviously we've been friends for a long time, but my like temperament and like how I'm wired, I don't know how aware you are. Like, I'm a fairly, I don't know, contrarian's the right word. I'm skeptical. Like, as soon as everyone says like, this guy is awesome. Like, if everyone told me, I had never met you, dude, Gerald, the best guy you're ever going to meet. He's just talked about you like you're a god. First thing that goes in my head is like, yeah, it's probably not true. Just because that's how I am. So again, I guess take that into account with everything I say. But the one moment that like really started having me be kind of like, what's going on here, is or made me kind of like question some things, was when again, this is a weird one, was when Bin Laden got killed. And I
was with you when that happened.
Yeah, we were in college. Like, we found out it was whatever week. I don't know if it was a weekend or we were in my house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, crazy moment. Like, don't get me wrong. This isn't me trying to sit here and be like, we shouldn't have killed Bin Laden thing. That's not the direction I'm going. But it's like when and then the first thing everybody said, because again, we're in a college in New York, so everyone at least leans, or I shouldn't say everyone, most people at least lean to the, at the time, pro-Obama side or pro-Democrat side.
Yeah.
So, and it was, Obama got him. And then they showed like some picture of him, I don't know, in whatever their war room is. And like, he's like, looking at a TV screen and like, and they're like praising him for sitting there and like listening to the mission. I'm like, the most wanted man in United States history, and he's like paying attention to the mission, and we're praising him for this. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we acting like? As far as I'm concerned, he did his job. Like, why am I? It's like when the guy at the grocery store put my bananas in a bag. Oh, can you believe? It's like, yes, he's supposed to do that. So like, I started there, and I started being like very skeptical and starting to see the whole. And to be fair, on the right side of things, like I started remembering how they talked about the war in Iraq, and my dad was a Fox News watching guy, so the war in Iraq and all that stuff with Bush, and how they're always like, oh no, it's not that bad, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, okay, so there's really there's a lot of bullshit here. Like, these guys aren't that good at guys, I don't think. And then but then I never really paid attention to it. Like after that, I was just kind of, something's not up here. Everyone here probably has their own opinion. I probably shouldn't take everything they say as gospel. Then you fast forward, 6 years. I think 6 years later is when Trump got elected.
Yeah.
Because they killed Bin Laden in Obama's first term, I think. So 6 years later, Trump gets elected, and I was living in central Pennsylvania at the time, which that state was an Obama state, both of his elections. And then Pennsylvania was a Trump state. And I was in like central, rural, grinded out Pennsylvania. Like I was in Trump country, basically. Like if you said you were a Hillary person, it was like, yeah, get this guy, fucking put him on a rocket ship to fucking Philly. We don't want him here. So, and I just realized like the reputation Trump supporters had when I would like listen to media and watch, read headlines. I'm like, I knew a bunch. I mean, I wasn't a Trump guy myself, but I knew a bunch from them. They were like some of the hardest working, like good natured, give you the shit off their back type people. And it's like, oh, all Trump people are racist. And it's like, okay, if you talk to one of the guys that was a truck driver for me, I mean, if I said, hey, give me your idea of the African American community, he's not going to come in with some like beautiful, like well-spoken idea. He might use a racial slur. He might talk a certain way, but you better believe he wasn't like advocating to hurt anybody. Or, I mean, a lot of times they delivered in neighborhoods like that, and they knew people and were like, hey, Mike, how's it going? And it's like, no, they were way more accepting than you would go to think. And then you look at who were the Clinton supporters, and it's like elitist, lefty Hollywood business people. And it's just like, oh, you people just want to sound like you're a good person. You're actually way more prejudiced and judgmental and I don't want to say evil, but like against the common man in common society than some fucking truck driving Trump supporter. Like that guy is closer to being accepting of everybody than you'll ever dream of being. And it just from there, I was kind of like, that's when I kind of started, I'd read a headline and be like, well, what does this really mean? Is he really a Nazi? It's like, no, I don't think he is. And then it's like, I kind of just went down the rabbit hole from there. I've gone far down the rabbit hole from there. But that's like, so yeah, Obama, when his administration, when Bin Laden was killed, and they acted like Obama was jumping out of the helicopter with a knife between his teeth. And obviously, the 2016 election, I feel like did brought a lot of people, made a lot more people aware of what's going on.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
That was obviously a huge moment as well. And again, I'm a fairly skeptical person, so when people are talking, doing that, I'm with her and Hillary Clinton's this and that, and then you just do, I don't know, a 5-minute Google search on some of the shit Hillary Clinton's responsible, or Bill Clinton, I guess, is responsible for, and you're like, oh, yeah, she's just a warmonger that happens to be a female. So I guess she's not, what are we doing here? Why are we acting like you're, some great humanitarian was just, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, it's funny you mentioned CNN. I was reading Ted Turner, who was the founder of CNN, Turner Classic Movies, massive media entrepreneur, like probably in like the past century, like one of the most important, right, for cable television. Mm-hmm. And dude, I'm reading this biography. Long story short, he toils, puts his sweat and blood into creating CNN, which was the first 24-hour news channel ever. And I mean, they did all this incredible coverage. They did they were on top of the September 11th attack. They were like there when, and as the biography goes on, he actually talks about, I listened to it on Audible, so he's the one speaking. Bro, he doesn't even watch CNN anymore.
Ted
He doesn't even watch Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, doesn't even watch CNN anymore. And he says, and he goes, I just wish they would return to serious news.
Yeah.
Like,
it'd be like Bagel saying, like, now I order all my shit through fucking Target because they have better service.
dude, exactly.
It's like, yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, if that doesn't speak to the fact that something is up, I don't know what does. And it's funny, the 2016 election, going back to shifts in opinions, why I found myself, I remember I was in an apartment in New York City as the election was going down. And what's that?
Being in New York City during that, that's probably like, weren't people crying in the streets and all that nonsense?
Dude, it was literally some of the people I was with started crying when he was elected. The people on the street were literally talking about, should I leave? Like you overheard, and I remember actually being emotionally distraught because of the environment I was in, and also because a lot of the media that I consumed was liberal media. I mean, like a lot of it was just very, very much of that rhetoric where it was, it's like this us versus them mentality. And over the years, through seeing that take place, reading about what was probably one of the best presidential marketing campaigns of all time, in that, the most underdog, and I'm not like saying this like hell yeah, like MAGA and all this shit. I'm saying it in the sense of as a case study of leveraging human psychology to achieve a result, to use awareness to achieve a result, right? So in that process, seeing all that happen, it made me reconsider the narratives that were being thrown around. Like, oh, if you voted for him, you're racist. I'm like, well, I don't think 50 million plus people are like hardcore, like racists trying to upend the country and all this. And conversely, like, I don't think that everybody who voted for Hillary, like, I know people who voted for both sides. A lot of them are great people. You know what I mean? They just they just have different political opinions. And I know, like, from the way that you've talked about it, you're kind of, you can't generalize somebody from their voting decision or from the political party. The only thing that you can really tell is, okay, they like that team better than the other, and I'm interested to know why. And so it was from seeing all that go down in the media that really got me to start thinking, like, fuck, if this is what's driving people to not just vote for candidates, but to actually start, like, vehemently opposing an ideology, like, of the other team, of the other side. I was like, I really want to know more about this. And I also want to make sure that I am not in a psychological position where I am vulnerable to groupthink, to just, like, shorthand looking around at the social proof of everybody on my team saying, hey, I want to make healthcare free for everyone. And everybody on one team is like, yeah, that's a great idea. and then because you side with that team, you feel that societal pressure to agree with that opinion,
Yep.
even though in reality you don't know the logistics of making that happen or if it's a good idea. You just know everybody else is saying it, so you do too. Like I realized I don't want to be in that position, because then I'm not thinking for myself. I'm letting, and that's what I'm so freaked out by, and a big part of why I wanted to do this with you, like why I was pumped about the podcast project and True Politics in general, is because, dude, people are outsourcing their thought process. People are literally outsourcing their brain and their thinking to outlets like CNN, Fox News, to places that have no business controlling them.
Yeah, they're just yes.
They're just, and I get it, because we live in a society, a fast-paced society. There's a lot of narratives out there. There's a lot going on. You have a lot of responsibilities outside of handling what's going on in the political sphere in the country. But at this point, there's so much muckraking and these marketing tactics being used for, not for the betterment of the people, but for one team or another, us versus them, getting more people on one side than another side. And I really think that whatever you identify as, it doesn't mean that you have to be an independent or a libertarian. You can still be a Republican, a Democrat, Green Party, the rent is too damn high, whatever party you want to belong to. You have to still take responsibility for your own thoughts and recognize when a media outlet is basically controlling you, basically programming you to think a certain way, because that's what they decide is going to be their agenda, and going all the way up to the fact that probably because they're being incentivized by advertising, by attention, by all the incentives that actually move the political media machine in the first place. So yeah, that's where I kind of, the conclusion that I come to this point is, like, I am kind of taking a step from either aisle, so that I'm not like, all right, yeah, like, fuck the red team or fuck the blue team. I just want to be, I want to observe. I really want to make informed opinions, and also be open to the fact that I could be wrong about some things, like everybody can, and entertain that, so that my judgment gets better and I can, once again, continue thinking for myself, and not succumb to that shorthand of, oh, okay, everybody's doing it this way, everybody believes this thing, so I'm just going to go with that opinion. I'm just going to let Donald Trump tell me what I think about gun violence, or about pro-choice versus pro-life, about all these different things, right? So
yeah, I would say, I mean, you kind of touched on it with the fast-paced society, and you, like you said, people are outsourcing their thought, and it's like, I mean, I can totally empathize with, regardless of your, let's just break it down to your Fox News versus CNN/MSNBC. There's your two sides. I can empathize with any person that's like, dude, I work 50 hours a week and I got 2 kids and I got to take care of their shit. So, like, I'm just going to sit down on Thursday night and watch Rachel Maddow, I don't know what night she's on, Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson or Anderson Cooper, and listen to what they have to say. And, well, I happen to, Rachel Maddow's who I watched, and she told me that Trump is a Russian spy. So I guess he's a Russian spy. Like, she can't be lying to me, because that's the time I can dedicate to this. And I can totally empathize with that person. Like, that's, it's reasonable. I mean, you're trying to take care of your family, yourself, or whatever. I mean, some people are just lazy. Like, oh, in my free time, I want to play video games, or I want to, whatever it is, I want to go party and drink. I don't know, whatever. But it's like, yeah, you want to live your life and do what you enjoy. So yeah, this whole, like, researching on, you and I attempted it one week. We're like, hey, let's look into some economic theory stuff. And it's just like, I can't like, I mean, I can get like the very broad, simple layman's term concepts of like free market stuff and let people like I'm on board with, obviously I'm on board with that, as I've told you, but it's like I can't sit down here and read, you know, pages and pages and pages of Milton Friedman on, like, I just can't do it. It's not in my, I don't know, interests or wheelhouse or whatever. So it's like I totally empathize with people doing that, just kind of outsourcing. Like, what am I supposed to think? Just tell me what I'm supposed to think so I can move on and do the stuff I like to do.
Yeah.
What pisses me off, and I mean, like any of those people give a shit what I think, and they have their own interests and their, you know, their advertisers they want, and we got to get our views, so we got to get advertising, we got to get all that. But like, is, hey, Fox News, hey, CNN, hey, New York Times, insert all this stuff. It's like, you have I mean, people are in this situation, and we can talk about why people are in that situation in society, why they have to grind that way and don't have the availability to find information and whatnot. But you guys have a responsibility to us to provide, you know, solid information and help us, you know, literally present information, let us form our opinion on it. Hey, we went to war with Libya because of this. And it's like, oh, that was an unjust war because this wasn't justified. Not, oh, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama wanted to do it, so yep, it's all good. It's like, no, that's not what your job is. And it's like, I mean, it's an idealistic statement, I understand, but you have an obligation to present us with information and let us form our own opinions. And they've turned it into the WWE. Like, you know, I'm stone cold. I'm just going to come out and make a wild statement and crack my beers together and pour it on my head, and everyone's going to and scream. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be the purveyors of information. You're supposed to be the ones who, you know, like, don't, you know, if Donald Trump says something, you know, in a press conference, you're not supposed to just like, well, he said it, so we got to find a way to spin this into being he's the next fucking Hitler, and Fox News doesn't have to be like, yeah, he's the next George Washington leading us to freedom. Like, you need to, like, just, what did he say? Okay, I'll figure out what I think of that. And yeah, it's you know, it's sad to see the bastardization of such a potential good.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I'll call it entity. Like, it's been destroyed by people's biases, and which everybody has been destroyed by people's biases, and just like trying to, you know, sell your views, and the doubling. And okay, not to go too much on a rant by this, but the doubling down on stuff that I can't, like, or lack of doubling down or lack of willingness to acknowledge you're incorrect. Like, I heard this clip. This was after the Mueller report officially came out, or basically everyone established that the whole Russiagate thing was just fucking nonsense. Like, like some weirdo Russian kids hacked into Facebook and bought some ads, and then Trump like talked to a Russian guy once, so it's like, come on, man, like, what are you doing here? And I remember I listened to a Rachel Maddow clip, and she opened up the her segment or whatever. She was like, she spent 2 years, however long it lasted, 2 years, I guess, 2 years just fucking pimping it. Like, hey, he's a goddamn Russian asset. He's Vladimir Putin's best friend. Blah, blah, fucking blah, 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 fucking blah. And then this comes out basically saying, like, you are completely full of shit and that's incorrect. Like, sorry, hun, you're wrong. And she's just like, oh yeah, I was, you know, fly fishing in a river in Tennessee. Didn't have any idea the Mueller report was coming out. And it's like, just be honest. Say you don't like the guy and you really wanted to believe this was true and you fucked up. Say that, and I would have the utmost respect for you. I think many people would have the utmost respect for you. And it's like, no, you're just doubling down on your bullshit because whatever your pride, ad sales, I don't know. And it's like, I don't know. I've become very disenchanted with, if you're famous for reading the news, you're probably a lying piece of shit as far as I'm like, I'm sure not all of them are. I'm sure not all of them. I'm sure there's someone out. Like I said, I think Tucker Carlson sounds pretty good. From the clips I've heard, I don't watch his show, but I've heard clips, and he sounds like he tries to call bullshit when he sees it. I mean, I don't know how much he ever says bad Trump stuff. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I'm not sure. But like, you're no different than the influencer on Instagram trying to get more followers. You're no different. You're just, what do people want to hear? Okay, you'll click that follow button. That's all I view those people as at this point.
Yeah. So I'm working on basically like breaking down why that happens. And one of the things, just going back to Ted Turner talking about what's happened to the news, is that the focus now is all about the personalities. And similarly, if you look at politics, it's all about the personalities. It's like, comes down to like, would I enjoy a beer at a bar with candidate A more than candidate B?
That's how George Bush was able to beat John Kerry.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, you know, hey, he's a good old boy, and John Kerry is kind of a weasel, so it's like, yeah, exactly. A bad choice. Both bad choices, but bad choice.
And going deeper into that, what that comes down to is like, all right, well, what kind of conversation, you know, going back to you talking about how like we automatically seek out opinions that match ours.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of conversation do you want to have when you're at that bar having that drink? Would you want to have one that validates you, that even taps into your deep, dark desires, your secret fears, your hopes and dreams?
Yep.
Or would you rather somebody talk about healthcare? Like, so what it actually comes down to in the media, whether you're a politician or a news reporter personality, influencer, whatever you want to call it, it's like, how closely can you validate and articulate the desires and the fears of the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Rachel Maddow, perfect example, because all she has to do, she could harp on things that are absolutely false, and she will win as long as that falsehood aligns with the worldview of her audience. Yeah, of her base, exactly. And similarly with Trump or any figure on Fox News, like, the truth doesn't matter to the majority of people.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of people want validation. They want to feel that sense of being right, being, yes, my opinion is the right one, and the team against me is the wrong one, and all is right with the world, right? Like, that's where most people are living. So it's like, I don't know what's scary about the current status of the mainstream media specifically, because there are smaller outlets, I think, like us, for instance, that are actually interested in, like, all right, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
But for the vast majority, it's a little bit concerning, because it's really concerning, because at what point does it go? At what point, like, what does the evolution of this media look like? Does it just get more and more like a circus to the point where nobody can talk to anyone anymore?
Right.
Like, where does it go? And that's what I think is going to be interesting to watch, especially in the upcoming election, because there's all these narratives already under the surface, with everything from the Russia scandal to, there's just a lot to be unpacked over the next few months.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's I gotta say, the one thing about this whole moment we're dealing with, like we're talking about, since like we can use, honestly, I can say that Donald Trump's, that election, the 2016 election, and a Trumper is gonna be like, yeah, that's when we made America great again, like whatever. No. And lefties will be like, that's when we elected the next Hitler. It's like, oh my God, like, no. But that I thought was my biggest takeaway from all this is it has hardened people and given people more or let me back up a little bit. The 2016 election, what I loved about it, like I said, I do not I'm going to, in case someone listens to this and is a lefty, I do not like Donald Trump, so you're allowed to listen to things I say. I do not think the man should be president. I don't think we should have a president, first of all. But if we do have one, it certainly shouldn't be him. It also shouldn't have been Barack Obama, fun fact. But anyway, is like you had for years, from what I gather and what I've like kind of like when I take a step back and look at things, it's like you've had politicians, not just presidents, politicians in general, have catered to a certain class and type of person. And the person that got left behind was, you have urban America gets left behind and rural America gets left behind. Urban America actually seems to be kind of like waking up to the bullshit lefty politician where they're kind of like, dude, you don't do anything for me. Like, we elect you, and then look at the real socialist chick from the Bronx,
Cortez.
Yes, like she's this and that. She gets, oh yeah, I'm all about the people, and then they elect her, and she's getting like allegedly getting really aggressively challenged by someone else that's basically saying like, all you did was make yourself famous, and then you voted for this bailout package that only benefited wealthy corporations. And it's like, oh yeah, you're not actually a socialist that cares about other people. You just want to get elected. Oh, okay, gotcha. And it's like the Trump moment was the kind of forgotten America. Like, think of any old city that has become a shithole, not like a massive city like Chicago, like Akron, Ohio, Binghamton, Reading, Pennsylvania. That's where I was when I lived in Pennsylvania. All these towns in central Pennsylvania is a great like microcosm of Pennsylvania. Actually, is a great microcosm of the United States. You have Pittsburgh and Philadelphia on the the coasts of Pennsylvania, so they're like super liberal, big city type people. You'd think they have the sports teams and all that, and then you have central Pennsylvania, which is old factory towns that all their jobs left to go somewhere else because we regulated the shit out of whatever industry.
Yeah,
and it's like those people finally got their chance to look at the center of America. Finally got a chance to look at New York City, Los Angeles, and San Francisco and say, hey, go fuck yourself. How about that? Like, I didn't participate in Obama's recovery. My kid fought in your fucking war that you voted for, even though it was immoral, and died. And my other son's addicted to heroin because we have nothing in our town except heroin now. So you know what? Go fuck yourself. Donald Trump's my guy. And it's like, again, I don't like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But I really liked that those, like I said, I was living with those people. I realized those people got to look at, Jackie from Westchester, whose dad's a fucking lawyer, and paid for her to go to NYU so she could, pursue her fucking poetry degree or whatever it is. Say, hey, fuck you, bitch. I was very happy that got to happen. And it was like, okay, all right, let's kind of figure out this Trump thing now. Like, maybe we shouldn't, pump him up like he's this thing. But I'm very happy that those people got their moment to be like, it's my turn. Yeah. Even though Trump has done nothing to help them. So when they look back on it, he has done nothing to help you. We are still in the exact same state we were prior to that. But
that is the point of the vote, right? That's the point. The point of the vote is to let people decide at least how they're going to feel, like the message that they're going to send, right? If nothing else, like it's almost like voting, like does it make a difference? It's arguable, right? Mm-hmm. But what it is, at least on some level, is a symbolic gesture. Like it means something when you do it, even if only for yourself, and telegraphing that. And of course, that's why it was so controversial, is because of all the things that Trump said and got away with saying, and just his general, I mean, it's like every day with this guy, he's like a walking tabloid. And
it's absurd. Unbelievable.
It's absurd.
Unbelievable
content. and like that's what got in. Like despite and not even despite it, but likely because of it, he gets in. Mm-hmm. And he connects with these people. So you've got 50 million Americans, probably more than that, saying, oh my God, like, oh shit. How did this happen? Like, who are the people? Like, you've got people, because I was, like I said, like I was in New York when it was happening, and everybody in the room is like, how is this happening? How, like, like a girl has to grab her inhaler because she's throwing a fit that Donald Trump is going to be president for the next 4 years.
Mhm.
And everybody's like, this can't even be real life that this is happening. But it really shattered in lots of ways the liberal expectation. Like everybody was saying, oh, it's, it's a shoo-in. Yeah, exactly. And I think I mentioned this book to you before by Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert.
Uh-huh.
It's called Win Bigly. And he basically breaks down, like, everybody else thought that it was impossible, and here's why it wasn't.
Mhm.
And he breaks down the fact that by speaking to those people and by being compassionate, actually, to their fears, their concerns, their resentment, which is a real emotion, he was able to rally those people, for better or for worse. Now, both sides are at a point where they're disparaging the other, and unfortunately, it's like, for somebody who is actually trying to get the information, it feels like it's more difficult than ever, because both sides are throwing stones so fiercely that, at least to me, the legitimacy on either side of truth is just diminished, because the end goal, at some point, everybody figured out, oh, the game isn't to be the best president or to do the most for the people. The game is to get elected. The game is to get our boy in the chair. And once that's done, what else do we have to worry about? Right. And that's also the dream that a lot of, like, Trump is probably better than anyone else in history at selling this dream where all that has to happen is for him to get elected, and then America's great. And, like, people are believing, like, I'm sure if you talk to some of the guys maybe in central Pennsylvania or anywhere else in the country,
they were all
right? It's like the moment it happened, it's like, America's great. Like it like magic, dude. Like magic. It's got no bearing in reality.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, like, so my hardcore libertarian path I've gone on is like, okay, so Trump got elected. He's gonna do all these things. He's gonna drain the swamp. Gonna bring our jobs back. All that shit. Like, last time I checked, fucking Fords are still made in Mexico. You know what I mean? Like, we still buy half our oil from Saudi Arabia. You know, all that stuff. Like, it's no different. And, like, that is my message. If I could say one message to everybody, the aforementioned Jackie from Westchester I was making fun of, which I'm sure there's a Jackie from Westchester out there. Sorry for speaking ill on your name.
I know Jackie from Westchester.
Oh, yeah. I know you're from down there. I figured you probably knew one. Drove a BMW her senior year of high school, I'm assuming. Probably not. Not too far. See, I'm not too bad.
You're held in.
Yeah. But, like, to that person, to the guy in the center of the country, to the millionaire basketball player, to the guy living on welfare, it's like, I want you to literally look at your life, and I want you to tell me how different it was. And I mean this in a negative way on Trump and Obama. How different was everything, other than people bitching on news networks?
Yeah.
The actual life, the tangible, I walk outside and do something. How different was it under Barack Obama, under George Bush, under Bill Clinton? Like, it was the same shit, man. Oh, taxes are too high. Oh, man, fucking cops are shooting poor black kids for walking on the wrong fucking side. Like, it was all the same. And it's like, they don't give a fuck about you. Stop supporting them. Stop acting like any of them. Donald Trump, Obama, AOC, Mitch McConnell, like, congressman, whatever, the CIA, FBI, any institution up there, stop acting like they're sitting there just, they're just putting their nose to the grindstone to help the good old America. They're not at all. So as soon as you start thinking that way, we can start making good changes in our society, I think. But, I mean, obviously we are a extremely far way from that happening. And a lot of it, and this kind of this is what I was we were talking earlier when I said like working in like personal development type stuff, empowerment of the individual, I think is the way to say it.
Yeah.
Like, and that is where that comes in very is really needed, is in order for you to get away from that, from having to take the sides, and Obama's gonna, he's gonna end racism in America, and Trump's gonna bring all our jobs back, and Hillary Clinton, whatever she was supposed to do, I don't know, or Joe Biden, whatever, is like, I mean, for sidetrack. If the Democrats end up pulling Joe Biden out of being the candidate somehow, however they do that, they seem to be pretty good at being corrupt. However they pull that out, I'm going to be very upset that I was robbed of Trump on a debate stage with Joe Biden. That would have been the greatest hour of entertainment that this country has ever seen. Like, it would have been unbelievable. Anyway.
It would literally be like dropping a baby into a lion cage at the zoo.
Yeah. Like, can't you just imagine Biden being like, I think his campaign slogan at one point was where he was going on the campaign trail, and they called it like the No Malarkey Tour or something just absurd. And you're like, can't you just imagine him like being up there trying to like stutter along, telling Trump that, Ukraine thing is, it's malarkey, and him just being like, there is 7 hours of YouTube video of you sniffing children. Like, done. I mean, I would, that would be the, anyway.
Then it would be,
the empowerment of the individual, yes. And so, like, everyone needs to accept that, like, you got to take responsibility for yourself. And you have to find a way to make yourself better and all this stuff. So you don't need to rely on, these elitist, whether you want to talk about media types or politicians or, corporations even, like, they take advantage of it in their own way. It's like you need to look out and take care of yourself and be able to take care of yourself. And then when you're doing that, then those people have nothing. They have nothing, because the only thing they provide you, or the reason they are able to get your vote and get your money, your tax dollars, without a hard fight back from the public, is they give you this, security blanket, this feeling of like, oh, we're going to be okay. They'll take care of it. They'll make sure I don't get attacked by someone, or that I have health care, or I have a road, or I have an education, whatever it is. Like, they think, oh, they'll take care of it for me. It's like, they don't want to take care of you. They want to be powerful. They want to be a senator so that they can, go give, or Barack Obama, there you go. The guy, became president. Honestly, the guy became president so he could write a book and then give speeches to Wall Street afterwards at $500,000 or whatever the hell it is a pop. Like, the guy's been a public servant his entire life, and he's buying several multi-million-dollar homes. Like, he didn't get into this because he really gives a shit about what your tax rate is, or that, your kid has a fucking decent history teacher. Like, he doesn't fucking care. He does not at all. Does not care. Sorry, all of you, anyone who voted for him, doesn't give a fuck about you at all. Donald Trump, to all the Trumpers out there, doesn't give a fuck about you. He doesn't. And it's like, they did it for whatever their reason, their personal reasons are, their personal gains. And that's why they did it. So you need to now start living your life the same way. Do what you need to do for your own personal gains without, going outside like a decent moral structure. Like, don't, steal from people, kill them. Like, don't be like that. But in general, like, look out for your own personal gains, take care of yourself, make yourself better. And we won't have to worry about this anymore. We won't have to worry about Gavin Newsom giving his fucking Manchurian Candidate speech about why California has to be locked down however long you guys need to be locked down, 3 months, whatever the hell it is. Like, that guy doesn't need to exist. He doesn't need to exist. You don't need him to tell you, hey, wear a mask. There's a disease. You can put a mask on yourself. You got hands. Just put it on. Go outside. Done. That guy's not wearing one. Don't stand next to him. Mm-hmm. The guy down the street wants to open up his gym. Don't go to that. I mean, what do you want me to tell you here? Like, you don't need that guy dictating how every step of your life. Like, accept that. Take some responsibility for yourself. And we can go on. There you go. There's my rant for the day, I think.
No, I man, it's funny. There's you ever listen to the Tim Ferriss podcast?
Tim Ferriss?
Yeah.
I know the name. I don't listen to it.
He had a question. I don't know if he still does it, but he had a question. He interviews like successful people from different walks of life, artists, writers, politicians sometimes. I think Andrew Yang was on there.
Oh, cool.
Philosophers, like all different kinds of people. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions he asks is, if you could get a billboard in front of all of humanity, what would that billboard say? And you just sort of answer that question. It's a very long bill. It's a big billboard that you've got with a lot of words.
Small font.
Very small font. Yeah.
It's in square foot, so just put it in small font. Yeah.
But it's interesting because it got me thinking, like, at least for this show, like for me, it definitely goes back to individual empowerment, individual. I mean, like the word independent is something that really appeals to me because it sort of has that sentiment baked in. It's like, think for yourself, do what is in your best interest. Oftentimes, what is in your best interest is in the best interest of other people in your community. So the ripple effect of you raising your stakes in life, your health, your happiness, your fortune is going to create a positive effect within your community, for your family, for the ripple effect out into the country at large, right? So as for the billboard, I mean, I think that individual independence, self-reliance, and really thinking for yourself, because that's where it all starts. It doesn't start with just accepting that, for instance, if you're in a community and everybody's on welfare and your parents are saying, hey, this is how you get welfare, don't say, okay, say, why are we on welfare? You know, I actually, there's a guy who I met a few years ago, and he told me a story that was literally exactly like that. It was his family was on welfare for his whole life. I think it was a generational thing. So he was, basically in the trap.
Grew up poor.
He was in the trap. He was in the generational entitlements trap where it's just like, this is what you're taught, like where our parents kind of gave us a clue at least into, hey, this is how you get a job. This is, like the middle class sort of deal, which is a trap in and of itself if you want me to get into it. But the welfare thing, he grew up in it, and then one day he was like, why do we have to be on welfare? And I remember he told me it was a story about how his mom was literally in line, and she was like, if we do this loophole, if we do this certain thing, it's going to get us more welfare. Like, we'll be able to make more money or something like that. And he was like, I don't want more
welfare
money from, I don't want more. I want to go out and get a job. I think he even said, like, I want to go out and get rich. I want to go out and
I want to be a millionaire. Yeah,
exactly. And that story really left an impression on me, because I was like, if I'm not saying that there would be no people who, number one, need entitlements. That's fair. And I'm not saying that there wouldn't be people who would take advantage of them. But if more people started to think for themselves, and that goes for not just welfare, but for middle class. If you look around and you ask yourself why things need to be that way, you'll realize, oh, things can actually be quite different. And not only that, I can influence that. I can change how that, whatever it is, that interaction with the world happens. So that would be my billboard. It would be, just think for yourself and empower yourself.
Yeah, it's really like and I think something that, like, that message that you're saying, and you said it a little more, I was more anti, like, the rulers of the country and whatnot when I was talking, and you were talking more about the individual than I was. But I think what the problem people have with that message is they think if you and I were to say, like, hey, you have to take care of yourself, like, that doesn't mean that we think, like, insert incredibly successful individual just that has tons of, like, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, whoever. Like, I'm not saying that guy is allowed to be an asshole because he's incredibly rich. Like, dude, don't, once you get there, don't, don't forget where you came from and all that shit. Like, still be a decent person. Look out for your neighbor, or look out for those less fortunate than you. Like, absolutely, you should do that when you get to that point. But if you are one of the less fortunate people, you should also be doing as much as possible to get out of that circumstance. I mean, you might be in a situation where you can't, like you're very injured or disabled or something, and you just can't do it. You're incapable of taking care of yourself. And like, then it's our obligation as humans, as society, to make sure that you're okay and comfortable and aren't like living in an alley somewhere or whatever. But to those of you that are just like, you had some bad breaks, you made a couple bad decisions, like, no one owes you, honestly, no one owes you anything. I actually have this conversation and with guys at work sometimes. They get a raise at the end of the year, or they don't get a raise or whatever, and it's I got a $500 a month truck payment, I got a mortgage on a house, and I'm just like, and it sounds cold initially, but if you sit back and think about it, it's like, you look at the guys like, I didn't tell you to buy a fucking pickup truck. I didn't tell you to go get a mortgage on a house. I didn't tell you to live in Denver. Like, oh yeah, you know what? It's a way cheaper to buy a house in Kansas City. Okay, buy a U-Haul and start driving then. Like, what do you want me to do for you, man? Like, we're not going to change that for you because you made a decision that has made your life tough. Like, if, let's just say, for argument's sake, you pay a guy $1 an hour. I'm going to pay you $1 an hour to do this job. And he's like, dude, for me to get by, I really need $2 an hour. And it's like, well, no, I'm not going to do that, because you can leave and go work somewhere else for however much it is. And I will replace you and get similar results for $1 an hour, because someone's willing to do that. If nobody on the planet is willing to do it for $1 an hour, and they need $2 an hour, then that will be the wage eventually. Maybe not today, but it will be the wage eventually. And it's like, you need to stop acting like someone owes you something because of the life you want to lead. Like, yeah, I want more than anything to own a house in the middle of like the mountains, whether they're in New York, Colorado, wherever, in the middle of the mountains with a ton of land and nobody bothering me. I can do what I want. I would like to actually have a house that's like, environmentally friendly, like, heat from the ground. What's it?
A generator, or
like you have like the heat that runs through the pipe, like the pipes run into the ground. I forgot what the fuck it's called. Geothermal.
Oh, cool.
Geothermal has like solar panels and all that shit. Like, I'm all for that, but I understand that nobody owes. That's expensive. I mean, buying 100 acres of land in the Adirondack Mountains, you don't get that for $50, So it's like, I'm well aware that costs a lot of money, and nobody on this planet owes me that at all, just because I want it. Like, nobody owes me that at all. And if the rest of the world, I have my own things where I always get my, like, oh, this person, like, I'm guilty of it too. But if we would all just kind of accept that nobody owes you anything, nobody, not a single person owes you anything. Your parents don't owe you anything. Your wife doesn't owe you anything. Like, they really don't. If you could just accept that and use that as your fuel to be like, all right, I got to make myself better, because, I got to be a better husband, because my wife doesn't owe me that I had a bad day at work and I get to be a piece of shit tonight. Like, she doesn't owe you that. She doesn't owe you that. Get a different job. Get a job that's better, so you're not a piece of shit tonight. Or change your temperament. Go see a therapist to help you talk it out. Whatever it is, I don't know. And it's like, do that. Whatever it is that makes you better, that you can do to make you better, do that. No one else owes you something to make you better or make your life easier. No one does. It's hard to hear. It's easier for me to say it. I didn't grow up in a real tough inner city neighborhood. I didn't grow up in a trailer. I mean, like, it's easier for me to say it. I mean, my parents, they're never like, you would never mistake them for being wealthy, but I always had food on the table. I had clothes. Like, I was good. And it's like, I guess I feel kind of guilty saying it sometimes, because I can see where someone could fall into that trap easily. But that trap it's called a trap for a reason. It's not, you fall into that trap because it's going to hold you back. It's going to keep you from getting whatever it is you want. It's going to keep you from getting there. Welfare, as an extreme example, welfare will never, ever, 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 ever make you rich. It will not. It might provide you the ability to live so that you can go do something else and become rich. But welfare, I mean, name one person that got rich with food stamps and a welfare check. A single one. Not a single one. They all, if they did, they had another talent. They were a famous athlete that was like, yeah, I had food on the table, and then I worked my ass off, and I became the best football player in the league. So like that happens, but they did something to better themselves. So be that. That's my message.
Yeah.
Again, also really long billboard.
Yeah, man. So maybe next time we can start going deeper into some specific topics.
Mm-hmm.
You could give like the libertarian, or rather the Andy Silva libertarian perspective, because I really hope, if one thing that we get into on the show is that like everybody can have a completely unique approach and opinion to politics, as long as they have good reasons for what they believe, and that could be as specific as a story or as general as just an idea. But and then likewise, I'll always I'm always down to talk about my perspective on things.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to eventually kind of start tying in, current events. For example, like the Joe Biden, Tara Reid accusations, and like what we think of that and why. But I think it's really good that this one we kind of addressed, like I said, I want to come from most topics from a much more broad perspective, just because I don't have the. I'll say I don't have the time. It's probably I just don't have the patience, to be quite honest, and I won't make certain sacrifices to say like, all right, let's dive into why like we need universal healthcare, why we don't need universal healthcare. Like I'll give you my broad kind of idea on it. But today was like even like one step out from that of just like, why do you view the world the way you do? Like, I think these people are really full of shit. And so, and we went from there. So it's like, I think we should start tying in some more current stuff. And with just the way social media and the corporate media and everything works, it's like, I mean, I feel like we could, back in like 2008, 2010, you could talk about how the war in Iraq which started in like 2004, whatever, was a terrible thing and it's no big deal. Now it's like, if you're not talking about what happened on Friday and it's Monday, then you're behind the times, man. Like, we don't need We don't need to talk about the Great Depression and why the FDR's response really did this. No, we need to talk about like what happened 5 minutes ago. We need to talk about that. That's the only thing that people are interested in. So we should probably start looking at, some things that are happening currently and, get a surface level understanding of what's going on. And
yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So just a suggestion I have.
I agree.
Yeah. I'm going to stop recording, by the way. I think we're good, right?
Yeah.